Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood, sitting here with my buddy and co-host, Lee Shands.
Good morning.
Yeah, and so once again, this podcast is for you people that want to learn and follow us along, whatever, and we encourage you to comment with questions or whatever, or email questions to us, or we'd also like you to, if you've got any subject you want us to cover, we'd like to do that for you, because that's what we're about here at Big Woods is, trying to teach you what we know and what you want to know. So hit us up for that. And you can send an email with questions to Scott@bigwoodsbucks.com. And don't forget, we have our sister podcast is the Adirondack podcast. And if you're on YouTube, you can get it, right on our channel. But if you want to subscribe, if you're on iTunes or Spotify or the listening to it, just the audio, you'll have to subscribe to it separately to get those. Other than that, you can get all the other information about Big Woods on the website at bigwoodsbucks.com. So today we've got Caleb Lewis on, and he lives up in northern Maine, northeast Maine, and he started his own business called Allagash Antlers.
Happy to be here.
All right. Yeah, welcome, Caleb. So anyways, Caleb had an idea about moose antler hunting's been getting popular in Maine it's getting more popular in the last 10 years. I was telling him, we were just talking about it a little bit. A lot of guys started back in the 80s and 90s just kind of dubbing at it, but now I think the dog chew thing made it the biggest business. People used to make, crafts out of it or chandeliers or whatever, but I think that somebody decided. Was you the one that figured that out?
I wasn't the one, no.
You weren't the first one, but
wasn't the first one.
But you thought it was a pretty good idea.
I thought it was a good idea. Yeah,
yeah. I think it is. A lot of dogs in the country.
There's plenty of dogs. There's plenty of demand for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, tell us about what you got going on, how you built it up.
So we moved up to, me and my now wife, we weren't married at the time, but we moved up to Fort Kent to go to school up there.
Moved up from where?
Southern Maine.
Yep.
Yeah, we lived in North Berwick.
Oh, yeah.
So all the way on the other end of the state.
The other end of the state, about a 6-hour drive.
6-hour drive, exactly. Yeah, we moved up there. We went to school up there, and I fell in love with Northern Maine. Like, I couldn't leave once I got up there. And going to school there, I worked landscaping in Southern Think in the summers. And I was like, I got to find a way to stay up here in the summer. I just wanted to spend as much time in the North Maine woods as possible. So I think I Googled jobs in Fort Kent, Maine, and Allagash Ranger popped up. And I was like, I'm going to try to apply to that. I got some canoeing experience, some experience like that. So I'm like, I'm going to try to apply to that. So I applied and actually got the job. Yeah, I was at Michelle Farm, which is right at the northern end of the waterway. There was a ranger station there. And we were stationed there. Actually, there was no living quarters, so I was traveling back and forth to Fort Kent every single day. So when you work on the Allagash, when you're a ranger, you work 9 days on, 5 days off. So I was traveling back and forth to Fort Kent, which is a good hour-and-a-half drive. But in our downtime there on the waterway, we started looking for antlers. And I think I found my first antler driving in one morning. I happened to look over, and there was a big rub, and I had heard from people. I didn't know anything about shed hunting or anything. I'm from Southern Maine originally, so I was driving in. I saw a big moose rub. I heard someone say that moose rub, and during that time of year when they're shedding, and I was like, I'm going to go check that out. So
what time of year was this when you were doing
this?
That?
Springtime.
Spring,
yeah. Usually when you start on the waterway, it goes from May all the way to September.
Yeah, got it.
And I got out of the truck. I walked like 50 yards up to the rub, and there's just a great big brown antler laying right underneath the rub, and that's when the addiction started for that.
That got you off to a good start.
Yeah, for sure. And then actually, I found that brown one. I turned around, I walked down the ditch, and there was another small brown antler laying right in the ditch, right next to the other brown one. And I was like, is this going to be this easy? I had no idea. So, yeah, we started collecting antlers at first, and We actually got around the same time we started working on the waterway. I started working on the waterway. I'd bring my wife with me, but we got a dog. We got an Australian Shepherd, and we trained him. We didn't really know anything about shed hunting or training dogs or anything, but we tried our best. We looked stuff up online, and they're super smart dogs, so they catch on super quick. And we kind of taught him a little bit with as much as we knew how. Like, we would hide little pieces of antler around the house and play a game with him, finding them and stuff like that. And we brought him out that spring. He was probably 6 months old, and we were down in the bottom of a cut, and he found his first nice big brown antler. We actually walked by it. The wind hit him. He turned around and just walked right up to it. And I was like, wow, I can't believe we can actually do this. Like, I always thought people with shed dogs are like, it's like extensive training and a lot of, it is, you have to be consistent with it, but it's more letting the dog work. That's the biggest thing for me. And we found, I don't know how many antlers we found that day. That day that he found his first antler, I think we found 9 browns in that area. So we started with a big collection of antlers. And our dog, Finley, our Australian Shepherd, he would always chew them. And I had seen other dog chew companies around the state and around moose antler dog chew companies around the state. And I was like, maybe we should try cutting these up. So one time I was home on Christmas break in Southern Maine from school, and I cut up. It was painful at first cutting up a big brown.
That would be for me. Oh.
People get mad at me all the time for cutting them up, but nowadays it doesn't bother me. But yeah, the first one, I actually was home on Christmas break. I cut it up, and I listed it on Facebook Marketplace. I didn't have a website or anything. I didn't have a Facebook page, and I listed it on Facebook Marketplace, and all of a sudden my phone was like, ping, ping, ping. People messaging, wanting to buy all over Southern Maine. And so all Christmas break, I brought my antlers down and I was cutting them up and selling them. And we pretty much sold out we were down home for a month, and we pretty much sold out of our antlers that we found that first year we started looking. And I was like, maybe we can make something of this. So I had quite a bit of cash laying around from that. And then I actually, on the way up back after Christmas break, I posted on Craigslist, I think, that I was going to be buying moose antlers. And I had some guy, he reached out to me. He's actually from this area we're in right now. And I bought probably 100 pounds from him. And then I listed them on Facebook Marketplace again, and we sold out of those super quick. So I just started, the way I built it is, just from the ground up, I turned your money over. Every time time I would get antlers, I would sell them and buy more with them. And then it took off from there.
Any business starts with an idea, don't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And hard work.
Yeah.
And a lot of work. Yeah. A lot of traveling all over the state picking up antlers.
Here's a few words from our sponsors. They're all top-notch people. We're glad to have them aboard. Make sure you support them. That's what keeps us going. Being the low-tech guy I am, there's one thing I've learned to embrace with technology, and it's my OnX. I used to carry maps and GPS when it finally came out and stuff, but the OnX has eliminated that because I've got my GPS in my phone now with my OnX app. I can mark everything in that. It's helpful that I can show other people by putting a pin in if I want to send somebody to a place. Being a guide, that's important, I can give them the pin, put it in there as, I text it to them, whatever. So if you want to get your OnX, get your Big Woods Bucks code, BWB, and get you 20% off, but I highly recommend it. Give you a little update. Skinner Sights. We all know they're the best site going, but it's a great company because Andy and the crew there are innovative, and they're always thinking up either new models to make a site for, improve the sites, making mounts for scopes, and now they've come on with their own line of scopes and red dots. Whatever Andy does in the company, it's top-notch, first quality, and they stand behind everything, and we're glad to have them as a partner, and we hope you'll try their sites, and you can trust your life with those, and they're going to get you the game. So get your Skinner Sights, and you can trust me that you're going to be glad you did. Just wanted to talk a little bit about minus 33 in the wool they have, which I believe is best wool going, whether it's base layers or your socks or whatever you're wearing. You got to have wool. I've been stressing that for people for years, to wear your wool, whether it's the outerwear or even your base layers and socks. I've been to the tour of the plant, see how they make their socks, and it's quality, the fit is right, and they're going to be long lasting. I've got socks I've had now for several years, and they look like I'll have them for several years more before they even think about wearing out. So I trust my life to wool, and you can too. Minus 33. All right, back to the podcast.
I went to Northern Maine Community College, and I was friends with a guy there. I went to school with him, and he found a ton of antlers. So he was like my supplier all through school, and I would just buy off him. He'd find hundreds of pounds, him and his dad. So
Now, how long ago was that you started?
I started probably 2 years after we moved up to Fort Kent. So we moved up in 2016. So around 2018, I started selling on Facebook Marketplace.
So not that long ago.
Not that long ago, actually. And we started as Allagash Antlers in 2021, our official Facebook page.
Yeah. So has the price gone up? Like, I know you buy them from people. So has that price gone up over the years, or since you started, or stayed pretty close?
So price that I'm paying for antlers? Yeah. It's gone up. I mean, with anything, when there's competition for antlers, there's
you got to compete with the other people.
Yeah, exactly. Other buyers. Yeah. It's gone up probably $4 or $5 a pound.
Yeah.
Which is more than we had the conversation before.
Yeah, which is,
we started filming when Hal and I first started finding antlers. That's how much they were, $4 a pound.
And it's gone up that much in just a few years.
Yeah.
It's kind of evened out right now.
For the longest time, I think, as I remember it, they started out at $4, but for the longest time, they were like $6 to $8, I think, as I remember. They were
I remember
6 to
a lot
8
of
for a long
years
time.
it was like $7, $7. Somebody might pay $8 because they wanted them. And then back then they did, I don't know if they still did it, they'd pay you for the brown ones one price, and then they had grades, and they'd pay less, down to the white ones.
Yeah. I don't do much with any white older antlers, so I don't even buy them. Mostly interested in
some people. I don't know what they do with them, but I still see some people will buy
some people
the
do.
older ones.
They sell them as like garden ornaments, and it's an addiction, just like deer hunting. It's an addiction. Spring shed hunt season is just it's fun.
I look forward to it myself because I didn't mean to cut you off, Hal. The reason why I look forward to it is, especially like the last couple of years where we haven't had a lot of snow cover, I take guys out as early as I can get them in the spring. Last couple of years, I've been able to get people out by like mid-April to the third week of April. You didn't used to be able to do that, but the last couple of years gets me out of the house, and I'm like, oh, it feels so good to be back in the woods again, and it's only April.
Yeah, exactly. After a long winter, it's nice. We're starting in December when there's not a lot of snow. We'll find a few big antlers, and we'll go as long as we can before the snow kind of closes us out. But
what did you find this year? Because I'd be interested to know if it's different in different parts of the state. But I've always, for years, on Christmas week, my dad loved to hunt birds. And when we did the podcast, my dad's passed. But what we did to celebrate my dad's life was Christmas week. Me and my youngest daughter and my son, we went up to Cocajo area. My dad always loved it up there. We'd always bird hunt, but we'd also find a few sheds. But we were up there Christmas week, and I think we saw 7 bulls that day that we were up there, but they all still had their antlers on Christmas week, and we'd get out wherever there was a lot of tracks crossing the road. We'd get out and check, and we didn't find any blood. So in that area anyway, they didn't seem to be dropping them Christmas week, but some years they do.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's like a tradition. I'll go after Christmas morning. I'll go out shed hunting on Christmas Day. And for the past 4 years in a row, I found a brown antler on Christmas.
Nice.
It's pretty.
Yeah, this year, I remember years, I used to go about Christmas too, and I remember one year, my wife's mother used to come up, spend Christmas with us for a few days, and so I was the fifth wheel, you know what I mean? So, or the third wheel. So they'd be jaw jacking, and I'd jump on my snowmobile. But nobody'd been by then, and just leave from the house. And I remember one day I got over into a spot because sometimes up there people just when they get some snow, people just want to run their machine anyway and ride.
Not many people are getting off the road.
Yeah, I just happened to get over into a place and I found 5 nice big brown ones, like in, I don't know, an hour or so, just riding this road system there. Yeah, nice big ones. So, but this year I took my grandson Rylan and we went right after Christmas and never found one. And then we went again, I don't know, a week or so later, and we ended up finding 2 one day, but still most of them still had them because you could see, you'd go down the roads with their sparring and hair in the road and no
antlers,
yeah.
And they spend a lot more time in the woods too, and there's not as much snow. They're not on the roads as much, so it's
used to be when we used to get a lot of snow or get more. They were in it cyclo, but yeah, out in the wind-blown roads, they'd get out there, and I mean, they'd be back in the old days before 2010, that's when we lost about half the moose. But before that, you could ride these roads for half a mile and sometimes a mile, and the road would be paved with tracks for that far. You don't see that anymore.
Not really.
No, but back then it was common. Or you might get down a road, and you might head in a road, like off in a plowed road, dump your machine, and you get down in there, and there's not much going on. Then all of a sudden you hit the spot, and then that's paved for a long time,
We hit a spot a couple of years ago. It was they were logging on both sides of it, so it was plowed. Not really. Someone couldn't get their snowmobile on the road that crosses in between the two. So we were out there in the spring. Must have been obviously the first ones out there because we found 9 browns on probably a 3-mile section of straight road. Yeah. And there were several spots in like a turnaround that there was just different bulls just shed right next to each other side by side.
Yeah.
I've never had a day that good again for road sheds.
You get those are the days you live for, though.
Yeah, exactly.
I ended up, like down our way, down in the Forks area, I ended up, it was maybe like 3 years ago, I had one of my oldest clients with me, and it had been a long time since we got into an area that was just full of sheds, but like in an hour, we found, I don't know, like maybe 10 sheds. And I told him, I said, boy, this is like the old days. We just got into an area where there was a bunch of different bulls. And,
they stayed
there. You'd find one, and you'd look around, and you could see another one from where you were standing. You'd go over and get that one. Yeah, you don't get a lot of days like that, especially now, but it's fun when it happens.
Yeah. I went down a road once when I told you I used to have my route there. I had 3 different routes, and I was going down, and we'd got quite a bit of snow. So, everything would have been buried over, and I'm going along on my machine. I had a Tundra then, and boom, I felt hit something. You always know that's underneath. I look back, and there's an antler, and I walk back and got it, strapped it in my back rack, got on my machine again, and I just started to go, and I could see a tip sticking up in front of me. Pulled up and grabbed that one. Yeah. It was the other side. Went down the road and bumped onto another one. Like in a 100-yard stretch. In a 100-yard stretch, I picked up 4.
Wow.
And then the next time I went back, I had missed one. There was a little truck turnout. And when I went in the next time, I'm just cruising down there, and I just happened to catch her the corner of my eye. And I think actually what happened was the snow settled, and just the burr was sticking up like 2 inches out of the snow there, and that was another half to one of the other ones I found. And so I had 2 match sets and another one I'd found right there. So I said, I got to go back in the spring and maybe I can find the other one. I drove in that road right after the snow got out, and right within, a few 100 yards there in the ditch was the other one. 3 match sets in just this little stretch right there.
It doesn't happen often, especially match sets like that.
Yeah.
That's the stuff you remember, though, huh?
Yeah, exactly. You'll never forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it's a lot of fun to get you out finding them and stuff. And
it's a good time to scout for deer, too.
Oh, yeah.
Right after the snow leaves. And
the best time. Yeah, we tell people all the time that because the woods just looks just like it did in the fall. It's been under a blanket of snow all winter, but you still see the rubs and you still see the scrapes and everything looks the same. And again, it's just so nice that time of year to get out and walk around and be back in the woods.
Well, sometimes you'll find, like a lot of times you get into moose country, that's the way it's been cut, it favors the moose more. So you don't think about deer hunting there. But sometimes when you're looking for antlers, you'll get back in there a mile and you'll find like a little honey hole where the deer are using it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a perfect time to scout for deer too.
I can't remember who it was, but I think somebody posted it on Big Woods, but they showed a moose rubbing on a signpost. Remember seeing that?
Yeah, I've seen it before anyways, because the moose don't signpost a brown ash, but they randomly rub them because they'll rub about anything. But I found lots of rubs on brown ash.
I think what it was, the one that I remember was somebody had a trail camera on it because it was a signpost and caught a big moose rubbing the signpost. I thought, I'm sure that was scent induced, right? He probably smelled something or had to be some reason why he wanted to rub on that brown ash. Because normally they're rubbing on fur, but...
Yeah. Well, in the fall, a lot of times they'll rub, like in the fall, even like during moose season, I found them on brown ash. And I think it's just because it's in their way. They're rubbing about anything they come across, in the rut and stuff. But yeah, they don't, usually when you find them rubs on the brown ash, the moose rubs, they don't like shine them down like they would a fir tree or something. They just
dubbing around.
Yeah, they just peck away at them and stuff. And so anyways, you've moved along now in your business there and you're selling dog chews. That's the main thing?
Yeah, the main thing is dog chews. Yeah.
Right.
The smaller antlers, moose antlers anyhow, they're so hard to ship. They're so expensive, the big ones.
Yeah.
So we'll sell the smaller antlers for decor and other things like that, but it's 99% dog chews.
Yeah.
Now, what about, do you, like, if you find a really big match set, do you try to sell them? Because there's a lot of people that would like to have a match set in their log cabin. Do you try to sell them as a match set before you cut them up?
It's 50-50. I'll post them. It has to be a special buyer because they're so big and so expensive to ship. So
Right.
if someone wants them, but I've tried before and I don't get a whole lot of luck. I usually just end up cutting them up for dog chews.
Yeah. Because again, like you said, it hurt you the first time you did it. It would hurt me too.
Yeah. It hurts less and less now, but
Yeah.
it still hurts a little bit.
Yeah. As the dollar signs get bigger, it hurts
Yeah,
less.
exactly. Yeah.
So let's tell us about what you got there. I see you've got a few.
Yeah, I brought a few chews here.
Those look like relatively big ones from what I've seen.
Yep, these are the paddle section here.
Yeah.
This is the softer part of the antler. Dogs seem to like this section a lot.
Yeah.
They can chew it right down and it comes from the top palm of the antler.
Yeah.
This is the tine, a little denser. As you move down the antler, it gets denser and denser.
Yeah.
And this is a medium chew between the paddle and the base I have here.
That's a good looking point, though. That's pretty long.
Yeah, it's a nice point. Yeah, and so the base is the antler. It's probably a good 2 pounds. This is for really big dogs who like to chew. I mean, this would last a dog a year plus.
Yeah.
Some people buy these from me for flint napping.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually get quite a bit of interest for that, especially the base in tine sections. They'll nap pieces of flint into like arrowheads and stuff like that. There's actually a pretty decent market for that.
Nice. Yeah. So how do you price those out?
I got an average now, so I'll multiply. When I first started pricing them out, I was kind of just comparing to what other companies were charging, but now I cut so many of them. Each paddle weighs roughly the same. It's not exactly 100% accurate with moose, and I'll just multiply it by what I would like to get per pound, and that's what I'll charge. So I have different sizes. I don't go by this much per pound to the customer. I'll just have different sizes, and
so that
on average.
But those to me look like those are like the biggest chews I've seen.
Yeah, these are nice size. This would be like an extra large paddle.
Yeah. So so you sell them by size.
I sell them by size, like small,
large.
medium, large paddle, small, medium, large tine, small, medium, large base.
I get you.
Yeah.
And you said like down near the base, that's where it's the most dense and heaviest. Do you get more for that because it's heavier?
Yeah. I'll multiply it by whatever I would like to get per pound, and it's heavier. Yeah. And we got the antler dust. It's a product of cutting all up. We call it shed sugar.
Yeah.
It's like a dog food topper. You sprinkle it on their food. It's got all
No
the
kidding.
same nutrients as Antler. Yeah.
That's a good idea because
Yeah.
then you're
Yeah.
not wasting the product.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise,
Yeah,
it's
you can
waste. Yeah.
Collect all the dust and sell that too. And dogs seem to love this.
Yeah.
Actually, like some people eat this in other countries. Antler does. They grind it up and eat it. Velvet too. Antler velvet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, but
Yeah.
I know I can remember back a few years ago because I follow football, but football players were eating velvet.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
mixing velvet up. It had something in it that was supposed to be good for you, but I guess there's some health hazards too. You got to be careful how you do it, I've heard, but I don't know a lot about it. I just know football players were eating antler velvet.
a lot of that's from the red deer farms.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest business for antler velvet is because on the red deer, we've bought some red deer and sold them before, but we don't do it anymore because there's a couple farms around the county here, but they cut them off before they get hard because they're all on a farm because they'll all kill each other if they get hard antlers and start fighting. So they cut them off in velvet. It's a big Asian market. The Asians will come in and they'll buy big things of velvet red deer antlers and they'll strip the velvet off, grind it up, and they sell it as like a powder overseas. Yeah.
Hi, Hal here, host of the Big Woods Bucks podcast. We're excited to announce our partnership with the most respected and recognized land company in the Northeast, Christmas and Associates Land Company. Owners Dan and Mark Christmas are two upstate New York natives with deep roots in the Adirondacks and Tug Hill Plateau, as well as two of the most passionate big woods hunters you'll meet. Whether it's newly constructed camp surrounded by state wilderness or family getaway, their team of experienced land guides are the best at matching folks with a perfect land track at an affordable price. They even provide financing. Christmas Land Guides will provide full land tours using ATVs, snowmobiles, and even snowshoes so that you can scout every acre. Christmas Land and Camp staff also help you construct the camp you've always dreamed of using our in-the-house master builders. For over 35 years, no one in New York State has provided more big buck properties and family hunting camps to hundreds of folks who love the woods than Christmas and Associates Land Company. Dan and Mark and the whole company remain dedicated to wise land conservation and treating everyone they meet like family. Always available 7 days per week unless there's fresh tracking snow. Call 800-229-7843 or visit Land and Camps on Facebook or go to landandcamps.com.
So I've seen, like at shows and stuff, people that do artwork with them, they take the burr of the antler and they make a belt buckle out
I've
of
seen
it.
that. Yeah. That's
Do you
pretty
sell
cool.
any for that?
I don't. No. We're busy enough with chews, but I've seen people carve like the burr, like different like things in the burr.
Yeah.
pretty
I've
neat,
seen
yeah.
belt buckles at
Yeah.
some sportsman shows that they take it and then they carve into it and then put it on epoxy it to a regular flat belt buckle there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty neat.
So there isn't a big market for it then.
Not as much as dog chews.
Yeah.
No.
Somebody called you up and wanted a bunch of burrs. I bet you'd sell them.
I got a bunch of burrs actually that are just laying around. So if anyone wants some burrs, let me know.
Yeah. So if anybody needs a chew for the dog, which everybody should, I had found when I got the puppy last year, a lab pup, my grandson wanted to teach her for that. He's all crazy about it, So I had found, like, just driving around in the spring, taking my little hikes, in the spring there, I found 3 just little crotch horn ones, and she was just a puppy there. And she took right to them and started chewing them. So it's been a year, and she's completely chewed up those 3 crotch horn ones. And so I had to cut a piece off one of my antlers for her, like a piece flat, like I cut the brow off with 2 points on it. And then she's got that pretty much. There's 1 point left. She chewed it in half. And
Yeah, dogs love them, especially fresh antlers.
so Ryland started taking them and just throwing them in the woods, and she wouldn't come back without them. So he's all anxious for the spring, thinking she's probably.
It's so fun when you get a good dog.
Yeah.
It's one of the best things, right? I love it right behind deer hunting. It's like one of my most favorite things.
It's always it's something about that, finding something like that. It's like the anticipation of it, huh? Mm-hmm. It used to be like that when I just used to go in the winter with I didn't have time in the spring years ago when I went. I was had to get my cabins ready for summer and maintenance. And I never went in the spring, hardly ever, maybe a day or two. But in the winter, it was the same way on your snow machine. You get down there, and all of a sudden you start seeing it's chopped up with tracks and your anticipation. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
I can remember one year back when that show Mountain Men was on, because Mountain Men, that was a popular TV show. And the guy that they had from up here in the county, he hadn't been doing too well trapping. And they had an episode where, I don't know if you remember that, they went out looking for moose antlers to supplement his income. That probably didn't help us either. That probably got a lot of people looking for it. But I remember it made an episode of Mountain Men.
Yeah. So how's people gonna get a hold of you now?
They can visit us on our Facebook page, Allagash Antlers, Instagram, Allagash Antlers, or they could go to our website, www.allagash-antlers.com.
Allagash-antlers.
Just look up Allagash Antlers in Google, and you'll
find you, right?
Yeah.
All right. Like I said, every dog ought to have one, right?
Yes, that's true.
That's got to be a mission. Every dog in the world's got an antler. Chew. Yeah. Let's talk about deer hunting. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah.
Enough about that moose stuff. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of talk about, you live over by Holton, Maine, which is in the northeast part of Maine.
We moved down from Fort Kent to the Holton area. Yeah.
Right. And so both sides of you got to get away from Holton to get into the big woods. You got the big woods down east, and then you got the big woods west.
Yep. You get the Haynesville woods just southwest of us, and then you got the North Maine woods up there.
Yeah. You hunt both places?
I hunt both places, yeah. I pretty much go wherever there's snow is at.
Yeah.
If there's no snow, I'll stick around down where I'm at now, but...
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, especially down east, they don't get much snow anymore during deer season. It's kind of a rare thing.
Yeah. There's some big woods down south of me, too, but there's not the snow.
They don't get the snow, and then if you do get it, it usually doesn't last either.
No.
Yeah.
Usually doesn't last a day.
There's a good gene pool down there, though. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a while, but we used to kill a 300-pound buck in Maine fairly frequently, but now I think it's probably for one reason. They check and make sure you don't have any of the guts in them and stuff. But I remember one of the last legit. It's been sometime in the last 20 years, but somebody killed one in the Haynesville woods. You remember that? A guy
I think
killed
that one was 310.
Yeah,
if I remember.
It was one of the last really super huge ones, and I remember reading the article about it. The guy, I think he stopped at Kittery Trading Post or somewhere and bought a grunt tube. Never grunted in his life. Went out there in the Haynesville woods, grunted in a buck, and it ended up being over 300 pounds. But I remember that it was in the Haynesville woods because it was on that old, what was it, Dick Curlis?
Yeah.
What are you stopping me?
It's better to be lucky than good.
Oh, I thought I'd said something wrong. I thought you were.
Yeah, that's it. You got to try something, but luck has a lot to do with it. It's funny. I've heard a lot of them stories scoring antlers over the years.
Oh, yeah.
I remember one year scoring, and it was up here somewhere, up north here. The guy shot it, and it was the record, the biggest antler buck shot that season. It's probably back in the 90s or maybe early 2000s. And when they had the antler banquet down at the University of Maine in Gorham there. And he got his award and everything, and we were having dinner, and they had kind of a deck out there, and people were socializing, and he comes up to me and he goes, bet you're wondering how I shot that buck. And I said, yeah, I'd like to hear your story. He said, I can't even remember where. He probably told me even where the road was, but I know it was up here in the northeast somewhere. He said, I was driving in this logging road. He said, I look out in the cut, and that buck's standing right out in the clear cut, about 100 yards. He said, and I stopped. And I said, he looked maybe a little nervous. He said, so I got my gun loaded in the truck like probably anybody else would have, and pow, right out the window he goes. He ran right over and ran towards me, and he said he dropped right on the bank and backed up to it, and I gutted him out, and I backed up and pulled him right in the truck. Yeah.
I thought he was going to tell me the story about, I remember he scored one for a guy one year, and he'd found one of those big scrapes and he was dumping bleach in it. Didn't you tell
No,
the guy?
ammonia.
Ammonia.
That
There
was
you
a
go.
state
I've
record.
heard of
That was
that,
a
yeah.
state record muzzleloader one year, and that was down by Dover somewhere, Dover Foxcroft. And he said, I don't waste any money on that stuff. He said, I go down and buy a quart of ammonia. He said, that's what urine is anyways. And he put that in his...
That's what I've heard. It turns to ammonia.
It's ammonia. He said, I just put that in there, and he shot the state record.
Wow.
So I can tell you, I learned this from, he's as tall and lanky as you, the big red-headed guy from down in Texas, the deer guy there, Larry Weissel.
Oh, Larry, yeah.
We were down, you and I went down to Kittery Trading Post once to do seminars down there, and Larry was down there. And I knew he'd worked on those big game ranches. And I said, I got a question to ask you. I said, I've heard that piss is piss, and that, it doesn't matter if it's deer, moose, or human, or whatever, they're smelling the ammonia in it. I said, what do you think about that? He said, when I was running those big game ranches down there, he said, I used to tell the guides, to piss in the scrapes when they'd come on them. So last year, Stephen and I both had clients. We found a place that was all tore up with scrapes, and every time we'd go in and out of there, we were pissing in those scrapes and told the clients to too, and we killed $2
Yeah.
last fall doing
I've been
that.
doing that I started doing that when I first started guiding. And for no reason, I didn't particularly say, I got to go in there and find a scrape and pee in it. But I would, if I was at a scrape and I had to go, I'd just go right in it. Mm-hmm. Always did that. It's, it's just ammonia.
I've tested it too. Like I'll pee in one or I'll put the expensive stuff. There's no difference.
No.
Yeah.
And I remember, Glenn Grant, Glenn. So he was in the scent business, I think, before anybody. It was way, way back. It was when I had just got out of the Marine Corps when he asked me if I'd be the scoutmaster down there in Scarborough.
Still back in the 70s.
It was in the late 70s, and he had already, through the 70s, been selling deer lures, different scents too. Even had one for fish. I remember it was anise, and it was for fish too. Fish lures, put it on your lures. But anyways, they did back then, he said, the company did the research on it for the estrus. And he said they found that the estrus molecules or whatever is the same in a mouse as it is in an elephant.
Wow.
It's so the estrus smell that they're attracted to, it tells them they're in heat, is no different in any animal. So
I guess that's why you see those old time moose lures. They were mare in heat instead of.
They still are. There's one, they call it mare. There's one in
Yeah.
Canada they sell. It's mare. So it's no different,
I don't know what
We're crapping all over the scent companies now, but I mean, it's just it's what it is what it is, right?
I've had good luck with orbital gland
Yeah.
scent on a licking branch.
Yeah.
I've had pretty good luck with that.
And I think that's something that's a different,
That's completely different.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not like urine, but yeah. So they have them more orbital ones, and then the ones that the scent they're putting on at a signpost is from, they got another gland in their forehead, the base of their antlers. Because I've got a lot of trail camera videos of them on signposts, and it's not their eye they're rubbing. They're you can see if you got one on a scrape, and I have those too, you can see that they're trying to get their eye around that limb. But on the signpost, they'll just rub their forehead like right up and down, and they might rub it to scrub it too, but then you'll see, usually all of the videos I have on signposts, the first thing the buck does is smells it. Mm-hmm. He goes up and he smells it. He wants to see probably who else was there. And then he might rub it, to scrape it down, rub it, but mostly what he's doing is you'll see him that slowly rubbing their forehead, and then they'll do it a little bit, and then they'll smell it again, and they'll do a little bit.
I've gotten quite a few does on camera doing the same thing.
Yep. Yeah. I've got does on there, and the does will come. I have seen more does, like putting cameras out, not that I put a lot, which surprised me. More does coming and smelling signposts than I've ever had. I've put cameras on scrapes too, and you hardly ever, unless you're on a regular trail with all the does and bucks are both walking, but in a random spot, I rarely see a doe at a scrape. But a lot of them will come and smell those signpost rubs. And it's a lot of times it's them big old does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
All the ones.
So they're coming actually to look for the buck. Because I've always told people up here, that doe don't wait around at a scrape for a buck to come, because them bucks know where every doe is pretty much. So they're just traveling, trying to get the one that's going to be receptive on that particular day. But it's pretty interesting. But like all animals, a scent has a lot to do with it. But so anyway, so where you hunt, it's a little bit more. I was trying to explain this to people. We got to try to get you listeners out there to understand. Northern Maine is big. It's bigger than probably most states in New England, but it's the terrain in the woods is different in different parts of it. So Northern Maine, once you get, I think it's basically, except for the strip of mountains that goes to Katahdin, like north of the Golden Road, but basically north of the Golden Road, there isn't really much for mountains. It's ridges, rolling ridges. You might have what they call them. If there is a mountain on a map, it's probably 2,000 feet elevation.
Feet,
yeah, it's not a big mountain. Like most of the ridges over our way to the northwest over there around Jackman, the whole Jackman area, and up through to the Golden Road. We've got mountains that are crowding 4,000, 3,800, 3,600, and then the ridges are 2,000 feet. There's a lot of ridges that just randomly are 2,000 feet easily. So it starts to roll and then flatten out more. But down east where you hunt it's really the flattest part of Maine, I think, when you get in the
bogs,
the down east portion.
Big hills, 500 feet out that way.
Yeah. So if you looked at Maine on a map, the down east area is where Maine kind of makes a triangle to the east where it meets New Brunswick in the ocean. That triangle piece in there east of the 95 highway or Route 1 or whatever is down east Maine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big woods. And that was predominantly softwood, I think, isn't it, over that way?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And they cut it differently than they do in northern Maine.
Yeah.
It's a lot of select cuts, and they don't spray everything like they do up in zones 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So there's good growth compared to what there is in northern Maine.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot better.
Yeah.
So you probably then, like up where we do a lot of the moose hunts, you mentioned zone 1 and 2, within a few years after they cut them, just about the time the really nice growth comes up that would attract deer, they're spraying them and killing them.
Yeah.
So you're not getting that where you're hunting. You're getting a lot of that new growth that's going to attract them.
So as far as I know down east had all up north, we had a die-off 2010 there, but down east did too, I think, right? The deer herd went down. And
I wasn't up there,
yeah,
so I couldn't say.
They've always struggled down there too, and I was just wondering how it is now. Is it getting pretty good deer hunting there now? Or?
Yeah, without giving up too much information, there's a lot of deer.
Overall,
and a lot more than where Fort Kent area. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then when you get, and part of that's due to you don't have any bad winters down there.
No bad winters.
So coyotes going to get some, but they're not trying to struggle through winter down there.
No.
Yeah. No. The downfall to hunting there is the snow, right?
There's no snow, hardly ever. Yeah.
If you want to hunt on
You'll
snow.
get it maybe muzzleloading week.
You get 2 weeks over there?
No.
Just one.
Just one,
Yeah, that's the downfall of it. So every place in northern Maine, it's not the same. And down east is still, because it's a spruce fir, it's what I call it's the boreal forest, and that line comes through. I always said it was somewhere around Bingham and, below Rangeley to Bingham and over across, the Joe Mary, Millinocket, and then right out through probably to Danforth or something. Mm-hmm. and north of that is the boreal forest, spruce fir forests, and yeah. But then you hunt too into the west.
I hunt, west when there's snow.
Yeah, you head
It's
in the
not
North
snow.
Maine woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got some good areas out there.
Yeah. It's more likely to get the snow there. You get away from the coast, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like there's a little less deer, so the bucks are easier to follow. I found that they're not. There's a lot more does down this way, so you'll follow them. You'll get caught up in does. Then not far after that, he's in more does. So could be good because he could be slowing him down. But up north, the doe groups are spread out over miles.
They travel more, the bucks,
so it's less information to take in when you're on a track up north than there is around here.
When you get on a track in there, you just got to hope you catch up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's one of those things we tell people all the time, that sometimes when people come to northern Maine, they get discouraged the first time they're on snow because they don't see a lot of tracks. And I always tell them you only need one, and you're kind of hoping when you get on the right one, when you find that big track. Some of the places that we hunt a little bit further south, like you mentioned, all the does, it's actually it's tougher tracking because you'll just get into a, it looks like a barnyard. Next thing you know, you're in tracks and you got to sort everything out and start again.
That's exactly what I'm talking
about. Those bucks, when there's fewer tracks, if you got the right one, it's easier, makes your job easier.
It's funny, even from moose hunting. I've moose hunted in that North Maine woods from 20 years, but the deer are still, a lot of the deer in that 2007, 8, 9 winters, lost a lot of deer in there, but there's still pockets of deer. You got to find those pockets, because I know moose hunting, you can moose hunt for a week sometimes in an area, and you might see one or two old dried up deer tracks a whole week, Yeah. And then you get into other areas and you're kind of pleasantly surprised that, there's some deer around here, and you might see some buck rubs in the woods or something. And so you got to really...
It's a lot harder to scout up.
A lot harder to scout, absolutely. You got to put you got to put some time in if you're going to hunt up there. You can't... I mean, you could, if you had snow, you could run up and try to find a track, but there's a lot of places in those pockets that they don't need to cross the roads much either, especially roads you can drive, like the main roads and stuff, because there is, if you want to hunt in the North Maine woods up north, there is a lot of blocked roads, huh? They're either grown in, they took the culverts out, whatever it is that you can't drive, and those are the places you want to go look and get back in. So where do you find them? Like to me, like I don't hunt way up north, but if I was gonna, I think what I would do was try to get back in, anywheres, I'd look, and I always look on my main atlas and I see where the least roads are.
Yep.
But up north there ain't many places with no roads.
Yeah, there's roads.
Yeah, there's road systems, but I would try to look for the roads blocked, and I'd also try to go and find where there's some streams or something and hunt along, because there's always those buffer strips.
Yep, exactly.
So if they cut up to the left of buffer and then you've got a stream, to me, that's where them bucks are going to travel, right?
100%. Yeah, that's what I'll always look for. Some type of terrain feature, if it's a stream or a bog, something that they have to walk around is where I'll find most of the sign. Yeah.
That's what we found by one of the good things about putting trail cameras out for moose is we found out, like in zone 1 and 2, when you start getting pictures of deer on your moose cameras, it's almost always along the river and streams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's where they migrate, when they migrate out of there for the winter, because there isn't much for deer yards down in there, but they follow them streams out, because that's where the cover is, and the less snow. But yeah, so it's a little different, but I'm sure, do you find many signpost rubs?
Surprisingly, no. I don't find many signposts at all.
And I believe that's probably a deer density thing. You know what I mean?
It probably
There's not enough bucks to
make
mature,
competition.
I found maybe 7, 8 signposts in the past 10 years that I've been tracking.
No kidding. Yeah, that doesn't.
I don't find them all. What I find a lot of is they make like community scrapes.
Yeah.
instead of, I don't know if it's instead of a signpost, but it acts almost like a signpost where they'll come and visit it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are. That's what I talk about when I do my deer clinics there, because I'm showing the people in the woods. But I call it an annual scrape.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You could call it a community one because there's more bucks coming, but I call it an annual one because those are the scrapes that are there every year, year after year.
Dug right
you go
down
back,
into the ground. There's a
dug
bowl,
in. You can see the scars on the roots, like you'd see the scarring on a signpost. And those can actually be. I've found those before where there's no does around. They're not leaving the scrape there because there's does around. Mm-hmm. That's some kind of another communication thing, like a signpost.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get to see that when Scott. I didn't get a lot of footage because I didn't have a camera guy with me, but it was when I had Adam. When I killed my buck this year, some of the footages after I shot the buck, I went over to see where I could find him because it was pretty thick. It was an old cut. On my way walking over to see the buck, I came to one of those big, I call them community scrapes too, annual scrapes, all the same thing, but one of those great big scrapes that was dug right down into the roots. And I actually rattled in. It's the first time I've ever done this. I was within 100 yards of that scrape, didn't know it, but I rattled in 2 bucks at once, and they were both coming towards me in that community scrape, and then one split and ran down in front of Adam, and one ran in front of me. Adam didn't get a shot off at his, and I killed mine, but that'll be in the video. I'm pretty sure I gave Scott the footage, but there was a great big annual scrape right there beside me.
Yeah. That's interesting, but I think it's a... Have you put any cameras on those?
Community scrapes?
Yeah.
I have cameras on almost every one of them.
So how many, like how many bucks would you get at one?
So I had one last year. I probably got 6 or 7 different bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was probably 3 mature bucks using in the rest.
So that's when you find something like that, you know there's some bucks, and there's got to be does in that area too to keep that.
A lot of them, I've noticed they're on big trails that they're using too, like not far off from where they're using, along rivers is where I find a lot of them. That's
where they're traveling, and the thing you'll probably find too that it isn't like they're there every day.
No.
You might get one of them bucks
once a week.
He'll
disappear. I have one where a big buck shows up right at the beginning of the season. He disappears. This is the past 2 years. He disappears. He comes back right at the end of muzzle loading. And it's 2 years in a row, almost to the same day that he comes back.
Yeah. Yeah. They got some big territory they roam. Yeah. But if you find one of those scrapes, and if you're a sitter, those are really good places to sit too. The signposts are, but those scrapes, you got to have patience because there ain't going to be, you see all the bucks on camera, but they're not there every day, you know. But if you have patience, it's a good way to hunt.
Yeah. And they're there during the daylight too. I've seen them.
Yeah, that's all in the North Maine woods. There's no hunting pressure. They don't hardly ever see a person, and they don't know what it is anyway. So day and night travel is nothing, you know. I get more if I put a camera on a signpost rub, and I just leave mine. I don't go look at them. I leave them, pick them up after the season or something, and the majority of my pictures will be daylight. Mm-hmm. There'll always be some night ones too, but there's always more daylight pictures than nighttime ones. So
I got a good question for you, Caleb. We didn't touch on this, but we mentioned earlier about moose rubbing on a signpost. If you've got a bunch of trail cameras on those community scrapes, do you have pictures of moose coming up? Will they come and check those scrapes as well?
They'll come and check them out. It's funny. A lot of them will use all the same trails, so I'll get bears checking out the scrapes and moose, but they're not using them like
right. I just wondered if
they definitely smell it and sniff it, and they're just curious about it.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we should shift into that. We forgot when we was talking moose antlers about
the infamous moose video.
The infamous moose video. So Caleb has posted last fall, that wasn't it?
It was last September.
September. He had a close encounter with a bull there, and he posted on. How many views has that got now?
On my personal Facebook, I think Facebook's up to like 15.3 million.
Yeah.
Instagram is up to 15 point something million.
Yeah.
And then it was on Fox News. It went all over the place.
Yeah. So it's a pretty neat film. You called him in, right?
Yeah. So I was originally going to set up some trail cameras for deer. I had scouted this place last year, tracking a buck through there, and it was September. So I did bring a scapula with me just in case I heard any moose or whatever. So I got into the swamp I was going to set the cameras up in, and all of a sudden a cow just starts bellowing nonstop. And then I can hear bulls all around her. There must have been 3 or 4 different bulls with her, and I was close. I was probably only 100 yards at the time.
Yeah.
And
Was it before the hunting season, like before the rut, really?
It was September 28th, I believe.
Oh, it was right
in the
during
season. Right during the rut.
The zone I was in, there was only 25 moose permits given out in that zone, so it's not super busy. But so I took the scapula out of my backpack once I heard all the bulls grunting, and all I had to do was just slide that down a spruce straight, and one of the bulls just peeled off and just came running right in.
Yeah,
and I wanted a close encounter for a video, but I obviously didn't want what happened. But he got in there and he was just waving his head. So I got my camera out and I started filming him. And every moose that I've ever called in before, like, you talk to them as a human when you're that close and they spook. Like, they're not.
It's like they're in a trance, and as soon as you talk to them,
they snap out of it.
They snap right out of it. But I could see on that one,
this guy,
I could see the whites of his eyes. His eyes were rolled back, and I've seen that times we've had hunters shoot them when you see the whites of their eyes, they're angry.
Yeah,
they're out of their mind.
He was drooling in his head. Once you can see in the video, I told him it's close enough, and he kind of snapped out of it. He kind of went like this. His ears came forward a little bit, and then you can see he starts to tilt his head again. And I say no because I knew what he was doing. He wasn't going to move. And when I said no, I started to back up. And it looks like in the video I walk into the open when he's coming back towards me. And there was a blowdown this way, so I had to step this way before I could get back into the trees. And when I took that step, it set something off in him. He just, I don't know what he wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking either. But as soon as I took that step in the open, he just bull rushed me right over. Yeah. And I was lucky. I was able to turn. I turned around and I reached my arm back, and he got me on the arm, kind of pinned my arm down and knocked me into the ground. And I was yelling, "Hey, hey, hey!" all at the same time he did that, and that snapped him out of it. It's like when he hit me, it was like he knew he wasn't hitting another bull or another antler, so he turned around and took off as fast as he came in after he hit me.
Probably scary for a minute there, wasn't it?
It was pretty scary. Yeah, I was sitting there on the ground collecting myself, and I was just like looking at the whole scene, and I didn't realize it, but he had knocked me a good probably 8 feet. There was just leaves just torn up. Yeah. He just knocked me a good 8 feet.
Yeah.
And I actually had service, and I called my wife, and I was like, "You're not gonna want to hear this, but I just got run over by a moose." She wasn't happy, but
yeah, they're strong, ain't they?
Oh yeah,
you can't even
nothing.
believe.
I reached my arm back, and it was nothing to him. You can't do anything. You're pretty much powerless.
Yeah, even a deer is so strong, but a moose is just like a bulldozer,
Yeah,
you ain't stopping it.
And he wasn't. He was a good bull, but he wasn't huge. He was probably one of the younger satellite bulls that came in off that cow. But
I've always found those to be the most aggressive, though. I liken them. They're like teenage boys. We ended up, the only time I really felt threatened by a moose that I can remember was, and we were in a vehicle, but I was up bird hunting, and I invited one of my buddies. So we had, I don't remember if all of my kids were in the vehicle, but I remember we were in my buddy's Ford Explorer, and the women were in it and everything. We're driving up a narrow road that there was no passing or anything, and he was doing that posturing thing going down the road, and if we would get too close, he'd turn around and bull rush us. And so my buddy was a fairly new Explorer. He'd stop, and then that bull would just walk down the road again, and if we got too close, he'd turn around and come back. So I said, well, let me out of the rig. So I get out. I pick up a good sized rock and throw it at him, and he came running right up to the vehicle and stopped right at the vehicle. And I'm thinking, man, I've never seen a moose that aggressive. But again, it wasn't a huge bull. It was probably like a 35-inch bull teenager that was just showing us, hey, this is my road. And he wouldn't let us by. We had to follow him all the way out. And then when the road split, we took another one. But that's the only super, super aggressive time I've ever seen a bull. And I mean, we're in a vehicle and he wasn't scared of us. Yeah. That was crazy.
Yeah. I've called a few in like that, but I got them to break their trance, you know. I remember one time I was in a clear cut with a client, and we see the bull out there, and I called, and then you could see him coming. I knew it was nothing we were going to shoot. It was the same thing. It was one of them 2-year-old bulls, you know. And he came in like he was on a rope, you know. I'd just call a little bit once in a while, and then I got thinking, you know, we're sitting on there was a little rocky spot, hump out in the cut, and that's where we're sitting. There's a few little spruce trees, but there ain't nothing to get behind, and we're a couple 100 yards from a tree line, you know, and I go, I better not do too much with these clients.
Push the envelope.
You know? Yeah. But he kept coming, and he kept coming. I didn't call anymore, and he kept coming. And my client was sitting below me. I was up like this, and he was sitting below me, and that bull got maybe 10 feet from him. And I said, I got to stop him. And I go, hey, like that. Yeah. And when I did, you know, he's kind of perked up, and all he did was he turned and he kind of shuffled away about 20 yards, and then he turned back and looked again. I said, hey, get out of here. And he just shuffled off. But yeah, that was interesting that one there it was probably that interaction. I found when there's a lot going on, when you get cows hollering and more than one and bulls grunting, it's like they're feeding off each other, you know? And that's when stuff seems to happen more, I think, you know?
Yeah.
Gets out of hand.
Yeah. One of the number one comments on that video is, you shouldn't have spoken to him. You think moose know English? And I'm like, I can't explain to everyone. There's like 20,000 comments, but I'm like, that's what I usually do.
Yeah.
You know, I got plenty of videos of me saying that's close enough, and they turn around and take off. But
yeah,
you're always going to have haters. We have them. We got people that post stuff. They've got no idea what you just went through, no idea what to do, but they got an opinion on it.
Yeah.
That's the internet.
Yeah. So don't give Caleb any nasty comments when you go watch his video. That's on you. How do they find that?
Oh, Allagash Antlers on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah. You can find it at Allagash Antlers. It's pretty
If you
interesting.
just look up moose charge on Google, that's probably one of the first videos that comes up.
Yeah. Probably get paid pretty well for that one, didn't you?
Surprisingly not.
No.
Yeah, not really. So I sold it. I sold partial rights to a company that was selling it for me to other news outlets, and it wasn't that profitable, but it went everywhere. So people were just taking it from all over the place. They weren't buying the rights to it. But
once it's on Facebook, it's out there.
Yeah, it just got shared everywhere. It's on TikTok. I don't even have a TikTok, but it went viral.
So you're the Kardashian of moose charges.
Yeah. I told my wife, I bet that moose is like the most famous moose in Maine. It must have been close to 100 million views between Fox News and all the other news outlets sharing it.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, you know, how things get the views. It's because when you get beyond the hunters, because the hunters is across the nation. I mean, we're a small minority probably, but because the moose isn't getting shot, it's interesting to everybody. Pretty much every human being would say, gee, I'd like to see that. You know, they never, I bet you 2/3 of the people that watch this never seen a moose.
Probably not, no.
Maybe not even on TV. They've never seen a moose, you know. Yeah, that's how stuff goes viral, I guess. But so anyways, that's pretty cool. So, so we got that moose plug in there for you. And so anything else about, pretty much covered the deer hunting up there. I just tell people, if you're going to, you know,
when I'm up there, I don't focus on signposts
yeah.
as much. They're not
Yeah.
as big of a thing for me.
And I don't know. I think it's got to be something to do with those. There's so much fewer bucks up north, with deer in general, that they just got such a big area to cover that.
Do you think they're just not even making them, or do you think they're there, but you just don't see them as much? Like, if they don't get that much competition in a lot of area to cover, are they interested in?
No, they make them, but you know, each buck might have, you know, they're going to have them. There's no question they have them. It's just that's in them.
They're just few and far between.
They're fewer and further between. And you think about the size of the woods, the odds of finding them
are low.
So
most of the ones that I found on a track. Like I've tracked them to the signposts. I rarely stumble upon them, even when I'm looking hard.
Well, the other thing too, I guess you'd have to think about, because I'm not really looking when I'm in zone 1 and 2. I'm moose hunting, not deer hunting. I'm not really looking for brown ash, but you think there's part of it might be there might be only half as much brown ash up there too.
No, I see quite a bit of it because you've got a lot of wet ground up north. But again, there's got to be deer around to do it. That's why I tell I've had a lot of guys from Vermont tell me, geez, I've never found a signpost in Vermont. And I know the thing is over there is very few bucks ever get to maturity.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the young bucks, because I know from my experience and looking at it and then having the cameras over the years, that the young bucks are learning about those, probably even those annual scrapes, from the older bucks, because they follow them around. I've got pictures of button bucks rubbing on signposts and smelling and coming. So they're learning that. So that's something that's passed along. And up north here, it's the brown ash. And I just it's 99%. I don't know when I've seen one lately that was not on a brown ash. It's the tree. And I think because any animals go by scent. So there's a scent to that tree. So once they learn when they're little, they learn the smell of that tree. That's the ones they're going to rub on. I mean, they rub on any tree, but to leave this scent on, it's the brown ash. And I think it's a combination of the texture of the bark. You see how it's like balsa wood. So the scent probably stays better. And so it's a function of that. There's a less density of deer. There'll be less signposts. I can't tell you much more about it because like I said, I've only hunted up north in the North Maine woods much more than like zone 4 just above me. But I've killed 2 bucks because I had to come over here because there was no snow. And I killed one over there on the northwest side of the park. And
so what's an average for you guys finding new signposts a year? How many do you?
Too many to keep track of.
Are you serious?
Really.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm in the woods.
And it depends. There's some woods actually. It's the funny part is you got to be in the right type of woods because we have some woods that it doesn't grow. The ground doesn't hold the water. It doesn't the brown ash doesn't grow there. And usually it's places that are like, if there's a lot of like white birch and fir and popple, that seems to grow in drier soils. White birch can't stand the water. Yellow birch can stand the water. You'll have yellow birch
right beside the signpost.
Right in where there's brown ash. Not white birch. Popple a little bit, but it doesn't do well in wet ground. Spruce and fir do. You'll have spruce and fir down around the wet ground and stuff. So that's why when I'm trying to teach people that, you got to keep yourself in the wet ground, and but it has to grow there. So if you're just randomly scouting and you get to a trickle, a wet run, you should walk that. And I had to figure out a way to make it easy for people because it's when you have it in your mind, you know, I know what I see, but everybody sees things differently, and most people don't even know how to identify different kinds of trees. So I tell people to look for the yellow grass.
Yeah.
Because the yellow grass grows in wet ground because there's no, it's more open. The sunlight gets down, and that's how grass would grow in the woods. It gets plenty of sun. So if you look for that, it'd be green in the summer, but in the fall when you're deer hunting or whatever, the grass will be golden yellow kind of. It's a funny grass. It's not like a high grass like in a hay field, but it probably gets maybe 2 feet high, 1.5 to 2 feet high. And but if you get into that, you just have to start looking for the brown ash. And if you find any, if you since we have more elevation, if I find it like up on a higher elevation, and I hit a trickle and I find a brown ash, it tells me there's going to be more down below it. Mm-hmm. Because the way that seeds is, it has a flower in the spring, and it actually, if you looked at them, they have like a whirligig, almost like a maple. And so those come down, get in the water. Now, some of them might settle right where they fall under the tree, but a lot of them get swept down the trickle or whatever. And somewhere along the line, if it gets the right spot and gets enough water, it'll seed in. Mm-hmm. So always walk down. If you find any, just continue down that wet run. And it's going to lead you to more. And while you're in that, see, now you're hunting for signposts, right?
Yep.
So you get in them wet runs, and if there's going to be any, that's where they'll be. And if I'm in an area and I'm finding a lot of brown ash, and I'm not finding a signpost or even any like rubs or even older ones, you can see the old scars on them. The bucks ain't there. They're not traveling there, so you might as well keep moving on to find some better going there. But up north here, I know Brandon Lane there, he finds quite a few over in the Allagash area there. And
I found more up towards Allagash than I am finding down.
Dan Wagner lives over there. Yeah. He's always posting the pictures of brown ash and signposts and stuff. So maybe where you are, maybe it's a function of it just isn't a lot of that brown ash growing there.
It's funny. I'll get in areas with a lot of brown ash, and there'll be deer sign in there. There'll be rubs on different trees, and maybe they'll rub a brown ash, but it's not a signpost.
Yeah.
And I found one where I shot my buck this year. I actually went back to do some further scouting after the season, and I found a signpost in there, but it was way tucked in a bog, in the side of a bog.
Well, a lot of times that's the way they are. They don't. I mean, if it's deep in the woods, it can be in an opening, but usually what I found over the years too is if they come and log there and open it up, they leave it. Mm-hmm. It's too. They want to be a little secure, secluded with them.
But you want to come back like 5 years later and check them again, because we had some signposts. A lot of the places where Stephen and I hunt, we had signposts that were just getting shined, for years and years. And then, like you said, if they cut too close to it, it makes them insecure for a while, so they'll stop using it. But I've got one or two particular ones in mind I think of. They didn't use them for a few years, but then they came back and they started a little bit, and now they're back. We have this one that always got rubbed for years and years, multiple big bucks. We had pictures. They cut too close to it, didn't have anything for a couple of years, and then it slowly came back, and now it's just like it was before.
Yeah.
So, it's a security blanket thing. They don't. If there's a big clear cut coming right up to your signpost, it makes them nervous.
Yeah. Keep looking over there. You'll find them. It's just you will find a lot. Over the years, I found a lot of them tracking bucks too, because that's where they're going to take you where they're traveling, right? And the other thing about them, sometimes they'll go by those signposts. They don't rub them every time they go by either. A lot of them just walk right by. And quite often they'll walk by like if you put a camera right on it, they might be passing by like 20 or 30 yards off. And if you were just relying on the camera to tell you,
You'd never know.
you'd never know about that. That's why I tell people that use trail cameras, it's not the be all to end all. You still got to do your scouting. It's fun to get pictures of the bucks there, but it's not going to tell you everything. So, yeah, you keep looking around, you'll find them. But maybe, I mean, if you're finding a lot of brown ash, it's maybe there just isn't a lot of bucks around, or they're spread out so much that there's not enough being made. But if you said you got 6, that's on a scrape though.
Yeah,
You
community
got 6
scrapes, those are,
Yeah.
I find probably a dozen of those every season.
Yeah. Sometimes I've found a lot of times a signpost and then right near it is one of those scrapes because they're there anyway and they're just, it's a different way they're leaving their scent, I guess, or whatever it is. But if you get a combination, that's probably the hot spot, right?
Yep.
You get a signpost and you got
That was kind of like where I shot my buck this year. There was a community scrape, and then right across the river there was that signpost.
Yeah.
That's the same way the buck that I killed this year. The reason why I was in there wasn't because of the community scrape. I didn't know it was there, but I had a signpost maybe a couple 100 yards away, 100 yards probably. And that's why I was there. Well, that and because I'd killed a buck there 2 years before. But then when I shot the deer, I just went down through a piece of woods that I hadn't been in before and found the community scrape too. So,
Yeah. Well, it's been a good conversation.
Yeah.
Glad
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you
me,
on.
guys.
that was good to have you on,
Yeah.
Caleb.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you
And,
coming up with us.
Yeah. So everybody can buy a dog chew from you and make it so you can hunt more.
Yeah. November is our busy season, so I'm already struggling with that.
It is busy.
Oh, November, Christmas time
Oh,
for
yes,
dog
I
chews.
never
It's
thought of that.
crazy. Yeah.
Well, by this Christmas, the baby will be a little older. And
Yeah.
your wife will be able to handle
she'll
it
be
all
able to
for you, right?
Pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, good chat. Good having you on. And you also, if people want to watch on our channel, we've got you. That was last year's hunt, right?
Yep.
The
yep.
film.
Yeah. Last fall.
One of Caleb's films we got on our YouTube channel and shooting a bare ground buck. A lot of people actually, me and Lee did a podcast on bare ground hunting and because a lot of people, that's their reality, you know. Yeah. Well, you know, you usually don't have snow. So that was a good hunt. She had some good tactics with that. It's a good film. So, all right. Well, make sure you, if you're not subscribed, hit the notification thing there and get subscribed to our channel. And don't forget to support our sponsors. That's what keeps us going. Until next time, good luck on the trail.